Greetings. Kind of nice, huh? It's in the 40s, but there's a little snow on the ground. A little nippy at night. That's time for another story. Instead of talking about different events, I think I'll stay with describing an area and where the event happened. This took place probably late 1970s, and I was exploring the South Fork of the Skokomish River right after Christmas, New Year's. Tried to get some pictures of some elk, and elk are really hard. That was the hardest animal for me to get pictures of. And unfortunately, I lost a lot of my pictures over the years, but you know, they're a herd animal, and when one spooks, boom, they all go. And you know, it's not the big bull elk that watches the herd. If you study elk and watch them, you'll notice that there's a very old cow elk off to the side of the herd. She's the watchman. And she's watching. And she's listening. And she doesn't like what she sees. She warns the herd and it goes. That's the end of it. So if you're ever trailing or watching elk, look on the sides of the herd. You'll find that old matriarch over there watching. Later in the year, I decided I wanted to check out the North Fork of the Skokomish River. Earlier I had read this book. It's called Men, Mules, and Mountains. And it's about the O'Neill expedition in the Olympic Mountains in the late 1800s. One of Robert S. Wood's books. And the expedition went up up to where Lake Cushman is now. Lake Cushman was just a swamp to start with, till they put the dam in there. But that's where they decided to start their expedition, about going up into the Olympic Mountains. And it was an area that was totally unknown at the time. The only other expedition was the Press Expedition, which is a fine book written about the Press Expedition. So I highly recommend both books. You can live in the Pacific Northwest. Quite interesting, very historic. Anyway, I wanted to kind of go up the Skokomish River a ways, and it was in April. Now, starting about the mid to the end of the 1970s, the National Park Service started requiring backpacking, hiking permits into the backcountry. Now, they started in the areas where they had their ranger stations. They had one on the Skokomish, they had one on the Dosi Wallops, another one up probably in the Elwha, and I think over in the Hoh or Quinault area, ranger stations. So you were supposed to show up at the ranger station, fill out a bunch of paperwork, tell them exactly where you were going to be going, why you were going to go, how many there were going to be of you, when you were coming out, and the designated camping areas where you were supposed to camp. Well, I've always been kind of a rebel. I never camped in the designated areas. I never told anybody I was going. I mean, my dad had asked me, where are you going this weekend? Oh, I'm going to be up the Queets, or I'm going to go over to Mount Rainier or up the Carbon River or here or there. And he says, okay, see ya. Nobody knew where I was going or why or how far I go or where I'd camp. And let alone, you know, you had to be there at the ranger station when it opens in the morning at 8 o'clock. And I'm the type of person, by 8 o'clock, I'm 3 miles up the trail already. And then you have to get the, fill out the permit, and then they had the little permit cards, you know, and you tie it to your pack, and it's waving in the wind as you're hiking down the trail, looking like a dork. Anyway, I would get up really early, and I would get to the trailhead about 5, 6 in the morning, and I would take off, and the hell with the permits. So anyway, I had taken off. It was like I said, it was probably maybe around the 10th of April. And most of the flowers and the plants hadn't really come out, whatever. But my goal was to go up to what they call the first divide, which divides the drainage between the Skokomish and the Skokomish River systems. And I wanted to get up there to the first divide. And my plan was to go up in the morning, and I climbed my way back up in there. It was about 9 miles. And it was like this. It was all covered with snow. The snow was so deep that even the trail signs were covered with snow. But I got to the first divide, and I got a chance to, look around, see what was going on. Because I wanted to come back later. Think about coming back later in the fall, about September, which is a good time to be out, putting a sneak on some elk. So I started my way down. My plan was, going up to the first divide, come on back down, and stay at, one of the camp areas there, close at 9 Stream or whatever. Now, I never took a tent. I had a REI poncho that unsnapped for ground cloth from a sleeping bag, and then I had a nylon, it was called ripstop nylon tarp with grommets in it and string. So I just put a little cover over the top of me, like this one here, and I used it at Mildred Lake, same one actually. So I kind of like to have the air kind of blowing in my nose and being able to get out and look around, see what's sneaking up on me, and listen with my ears. And being in a tent, if you hear something, your imagination can kind of run away from yourself. So I kind of like not taking a tent, especially if it's much lighter. So I started putting my tarp up, getting all set. I thought I heard some talking. Because I hadn't seen anybody. I didn't think anybody was up there in April, in that area. So pretty soon I hear more voices. And then all of a sudden it occurred to me what was happening. It was a troop of Boy Scouts. And there were a lot of them. And they were making a lot of noise. And they were heading straight for the area where I'm camping. So I start undoing all my stuff and everything. And the Boy Scouts come in, and I load up all my gear and everything. I head down the trail, and I found a spot down there about a half mile away up on the side of a little ridge there, and I camped there overnight. But oh gosh, was it cold? You're elevation about 1,500 feet or something, and out there in the middle of the night, it's cold. You got my down. Back then you used real down. We didn't have that artificial down stuff. So I'm covered in wool and wool stocking cap, and I got a down vest on, and I'm in a down sleeping bag, trying to stay warm, Gosh, it was cold. But anyway, it got light enough to see, so I jumped out, put my boots on, started running up and down the trail, and tried to get warm. Oh gosh, it was a cold, bitter time. But that was my first trip up into the Skokomish country. The Skokomish River Valley was just full of these giant Douglas fir trees, 200 feet tall and 6 feet or more in diameter. And I understand that in the 1980s sometime they had a great big fire in there. I think it was called the Beaver Fire or something. Can't remember what it was called. But anyway, I understand a lot of that got burned out. Some of the trails that go over towards Mount Lincoln and some of the other areas over there got burned up. I don't know how much they fixed up that country or the trails or anything. But yeah, it was a beautiful valley with just enormous trees. And went up a little farther and you get into big cedar trees, and then Alaska cedar and western red cedar and all kinds of flowers. It's gorgeous. You know, Skokomish is a beautiful valley up in there. So it was in April, or I mean in September, when I decided to make another trip up into the high country there. I enjoyed being in the Olympics, and you know, late August and September, laying there and listening to the elk bugling, you know. So my plan was to go up same trail, Skokomish River, get there early, bypass the ranger station, get up to the first divide, and then take off to the right. And there was kind of what they called the Mount Hopper Way Trail. Now, Way Trail is a trail that's not really maintained, and it's just a series of interconnected animal trails, really. So my goal was to go around Mount Hopper over to Elk Basin and check that out for elk. And I have a lot of elk sign. I mean, there were rubbing and tracks and all kinds of stuff. And I thought, oh, I'm going to see some elk. Well, I didn't. I saw marmots and deer and beautiful wildflowers. Beautiful views up along the right-hand side there, Mount Skokomish and Henderson, and this gorgeous country. And then back over the other way to the Duckabush, you know, you can look clear back up into the Elk Basin. Anyway, I decided to come on back down, so I come on down past Mount Hopper and go back over to the first divide. And I think, well, my plan was to camp overnight now. It's starting to get late. But I didn't want to go back down to Skokomish, so I dropped down the other side to an area, I think it's called Home Sweet Home. Now, back in the 60s and the 70s and even in the 50s, there were still shelters that had been built by the CC crews in the 1930s, shelter lean-tos. I understand they've probably gotten rid of all of those now. But there was one down there at Home Sweet Home, I know that, which dropped down into the Duckabush. But I didn't want to stay there because a lot of times those places are infested with deer mice. Now, what is a deer mouse? He's a critter about that long. And he's got a little tail. And maybe with the tail, he might be 3-4 inches long. Kind of brown and gray on top and kind of light colored on his belly. He's got really big little feet. And he's got great big beady black eyes. Well, they can be quite a pest. But these crazy little deer mice, they're acrobats. And I don't know how they get into things. They get into the smallest little things and they go after your food. And there'd be times when I'd wake up in the morning and I'd find my food bag had gotten into, and there'd be little pieces of granola and pieces of paper strung out through the woods where these little deer mice had raided me during the night. One night I got woke up by one that was pulling on my sling bag string. And I don't know what he thought that was, a giant worm or something. The strangest thing I had pulling on my string on my sleeping bag, I felt something pulling like that. I couldn't figure out what it was. I kept pulling and I was afraid to look because it was pulling hard. So I kind of peeked out of my sleep bag and turned around and looked. It was a mountain goat. A mountain goat was chewing on the end of my string to my sleep bag, pulling me like that. That was the strangest time for sleep bag pulling anyway. But anyway, these little deer mice, they could get into anything. I mean, I know people that hung up their food down strings and then wake up at night with a flashlight and look, and the little deer mice got over to the string and it climbed on down to their food supply. So one night I decided to stick my food inside a bag, and then I stuck it into another sack, like a rucksack, and I used it for a pillow. Woke up in the middle of the night, my ear, I could hear this munching sound, this scratching and munching sound. somehow one of them got into that bag. It was into my dry bag. And was trying to get into the food bag. Oh, I picked that thing up. I sat there, beat it like that, threw it to the side. I was so mad. I don't know what happened to him. It wasn't in there when I got up the next morning. But you could be laying there at night, and you can, the little buggers that run across your sleeping bag, they run across your arm. I've had them run across my face and run through my hair. They got, like I said, they got they're little funny little feet. It's like, they're incredible little animals. Anyway, I'm sure most people have been backpacking in the Olympic Mountains. Got some deer mouth stories to tell you. Of course, one of the worst places is if you're around some of the main camping areas or around any of the shelters that were built. Anyway, I found a spot up above Home Sweet Home on the side of Mount Hopper. Beautiful valley down below, just, you know, getting dark, and I see Mount Steele and Ducklebush over here, and over the distance you can see into the Ducklebush Valley. It was time to cook dinner. When I cooked dinner, I had my little stove, and I had a little pot and everything. I didn't care too much for freeze-dried food. I normally had a mixture of rice, about a half a pound of butter, you know, nuts, raisins, mix it all together, have some beef jerky, maybe some tang or something, but mostly instant tea, unsugared so you wouldn't attract the bugs. But occasionally I did have freeze-dried meals, and I'd fix the mountain house, and you'd open it up. You get your water boiling, you know. So I'm bent over and I'm getting my stove, pumping on my stove, you know, getting the lid up and going, and I looked over, about 10 feet away, and there was what they call a little plant called a flower. It's called vanilla leaf, and it's got a great big leaf. And underneath that vanilla leaf, I could see them black beady eyes watching me. And I'm watching, and it's watching. I'm getting the stove going. I got it lit. Started the water boiling in the pot, you know, because you got to have boiling water to pour into the mountain house freeze-dried food. The whole time them little beady eyes are watching me. So eventually I got the water boiling, and you open up the freeze-dried food at the time. I presume it's the same today as it was back almost 50 years ago. You get a little packet that's open, shaped like a little boat, and you pour in the hot water, and you kind of just let it set, you know, till it's done, which takes 3-4 minutes is all. Might stir it once in a while. So I take the package and I put it on the ground. I pour in the water I'm supposed to pour in. The whole time I'm looking over, and that little guy, he's got his beady little eyes still watching me. So I sat there and mixed them up a little bit, you know. I'm mixing it up and getting it stirred and getting it ready, and looked at it, put some salt on it, you know, and stirred it. And I leaned over to put it down on the ground, because it was all done now. That little bugger ran out from underneath that vanilla leaf, that little deer mouse. He ran over and glimmed a hold of the package that was my freeze-dried dinner. And I'm on one end of the package, and he's on the other end of the package, and we're going like this. I couldn't believe it. I pull a little bit, and he starts to pull back. I pull a little bit, and he starts to pull back. Finally, I got mad, pulled the damn thing away from him. But I can't believe I had to sit there and fight for my dinner that night. Anyway, I ate 2/3 of it or whatever. The whole time he went back to his vanilla leaf. He's sitting over there, beady eyes looking at me. So I sat it down. No sooner it hits the ground, whew, he comes by, grabs it, and goes ripping off this direction. And he went off, maybe about 20-30 feet over there, and I could see where he was munching on my freeze-dried food, which was, I think it was Spanish rice. I'm not sure. That was about the only mountain house I liked. I've had some bad ones. Anyway, that was just so strange to be in that kind of a battle, you know, with that animal for my dinner. I went to sleep that night. I was never bothered by him. I never heard him or felt him run across me or anything. So I guess he was full, sleeping it off someplace. I really didn't expect, it wasn't a main camping area, so I didn't expect to be a deer mouse there, but I guess there was. But eventually I just worked my way back down the next morning, you know, and back out to the car and headed home. But up that Skokomish Trail, I don't think I've ever been back up in there since. So I'd like to do it someday, but I couldn't physically do it. So I hope you enjoyed that little story. And if you get a chance, there's some really nice trails in that Skokomish River area. You know, and it's not just the main trail, but there's some side trails go up to some lakes. I think it's Flapjack Lakes and Black and White Lakes and Mount Lincoln, and I think go up to Gladys Peak, I think. There's a whole bunch of different places if you look on a map. And, you know, if you're interested in the history of that area, you know, get Men, Mules, and Mountains, the exploration of the Olympic National Park, or before it was a park, 1889 or 1890, I think. Pretty good little book. So I hope you enjoyed all this, and catch my next story next time. Till then, see ya.